The Amish water bottle termite trick. Simple, cheap, and old order approved. But here's what the common version of this trick won't tell you. And this is the part that separates the folks who actually stop termites from the ones who just feel like they're doing something. There's a hidden mechanism buried inside the chemistry of this water bottle system that most people never even recognize. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, I'm going to reveal the exact principle that makes this work so much better than people think, and it has nothing to do with what the internet says. If you're watching this and you've got a house built before 1980, or if you've ever found mud tunnels on your foundation, or if you just want to understand what your great-grandparents already knew about protecting their homes, this matters. So before we go any further, I'd love it if you'd subscribe to this channel. And in the comments below, I want to hear from you. Have you ever dealt with termites, or do you know someone in your family who has? The stories matter more than you think. Wait, this part is important. Before I walk you through the entire system, you need to understand something critical that almost nobody talks about. The complete guide to everything we cover today, the principles, the hidden signals, the patterns that tell you whether termites are actually in your soil, all of that is laid out in detail in my full ebook. You'll find it linked in the description and pinned in the comments. It's the long version, the deep version. If you want to master this skill completely, that's where it all lives. Now, let me take you back about 30 years. I was maybe 10 or 11 years old, and my grandfather called me down into the cellar of the farmhouse, the same one my family still uses today. This wasn't a casual invitation. When grandfather called you down, there was something you needed to learn. He walked me over to one of the support beams, the thick oak timber that held up half the kitchen above, and he showed me something I'd never noticed before. A series of pencil marks on the wood, dated, going back decades. Some marked 1983, some 1991, some from 2002. Each one had a small note written beside it. "What are these?" I asked him. Grandfather looked at me the way he always did when I was about to learn something my whole family had been doing for generations without really explaining it. He said, "These are the marks of vigilance. Every year, sometimes twice a year, someone in this house walks down here and checks this beam. We mark where the wood feels solid, we mark where it doesn't. We're not waiting for the problem to find us. We're finding the problem before it becomes a problem." That was the moment I understood that the water bottle trick wasn't actually invented by some clever engineer in the last 10 years. It was an evolution of something much older, a principle my family had been living by for longer than I'd been alive. A principle that the modern pest control industry has turned into an $8.00 monthly subscription, when the actual mechanism behind it costs less than a cup of coffee. Here's the real architecture of what's about to happen. Subterranean termites, and these are the ones that cause about 90% of all structural damage in American homes, they operate on a biological principle that hasn't changed in millions of years. They cannot exist without soil contact, not for more than a few hours. They'll dehydrate. Their exoskeleton is designed to lose moisture constantly, and that moisture has to be replenished by the earth itself. This is not a preference. This is a biological necessity written into their DNA. So when a termite colony in the ground, and we're talking colonies that can stretch across half an acre and go thousands of feet deep, when that colony wants to reach the wood of your house, they have to do something very specific. They have to build. They have to construct. They build mud tubes, literal tunnels made from soil, termite saliva, and feces, yes, their own waste, compressed into a structural paste that hardens like concrete. Those tubes are their lifeline from the ground to your house. And here's the part that your exterminator doesn't necessarily emphasize when he's quoting you a price. Those mud tubes are also their confession. The mud tube is not a secret. It's not hidden. It's the biological equivalent of a termite leaving a giant arrow pointing at itself saying, "We are here. We are building. We are hungry." And your great-grandmother knew this. She knew that checking for those tubes was the difference between catching an infestation early and watching your house eat itself from the inside. The problem with the old method, the one my family used for generations, was time and coverage. You could check your cellar beams. You could walk around looking for mud tubes. But termites don't need to build where you look. They're going to take the easiest route from their colony to your wood. And that route might be on the backside of your house, buried under mulch, hidden behind a downspout, pressed against the foundation where you never think to check. So the modern adaptation, the one that actually works, is to make the termites come to you. Not in your house, not in your foundation, but to a place where you're waiting for them, where you can see them, where you can document exactly how active they are and how close they're getting, without ever drilling into your own walls. This is where the water bottle becomes your early warning system. And the reason it works is not because of the bottle itself, it's because of what's inside it. It's because of the principle of biological attraction combined with visual documentation. Balsa wood, one of the softest, most cellulose-rich woods on the planet. Termites will travel for it. They will seek it out. It's like ringing a dinner bell for a subterranean termite colony. You're not tricking them. You're not poisoning them. You're not forcing them into anything. You're simply offering them exactly what they want in a location where you can monitor them, check them, and know, with certainty, whether they're in your soil or not. Now, here's what separates this method from just leaving a piece of wood in your yard. The Amish have been monitoring their timber for pest pressure for generations, but they did it with intention. They checked the beams. They looked at the sills. They knew where to look because they understood the termite's path. Every termite moving from soil to wood follows the same route. It climbs. It builds its mud tube against something vertical. It doesn't magically appear inside your beam. It announces itself, and your water bottle is going to catch that announcement. The black paint serves one purpose. It blocks out light. Termites are photophobic. They avoid light. The darkness inside the bottle creates an environment they recognize as safe, as underground-like. This is not guesswork. This is behavioral biology. The moment you paint that bottle black, you've recreated, in miniature, the conditions of their colony. The unpainted neck at the top serves a different function. It's your viewing window. When termites enter the bottle from below, and they will enter from below, you need to see them. You need to count them. You need to know if it's one termite wandering lost in your soil, or if it's an active foraging column from a colony 3 feet down. That's the difference between no problem yet and call a professional next month. The unpainted section lets you see that difference at a glance. Now the balsa wood goes in. This is where the trap becomes what it actually is, a feeding station. The balsa is soft enough that a termite colony can mobilize workers to begin consuming it within 48 hours of discovery. Some colonies will find it within 24 hours. Others might take a week. But once they find it, they don't leave. They have found food, they have found shelter in the form of a protected, moist chamber. They will return. They will bring their siblings. The colony will feast on that balsa wood while you watch. The water is critical. You fill it to about 1/3 full. Not more. You're creating humidity, not a swimming pool. The moisture activates the cellulose scent. Wet wood smells stronger to termites than dry wood. It's more metabolically accessible to them. The water also keeps the wood from drying out during the month or 6 weeks you'll leave the bottle in the ground. In an arid climate, that matters. In humid climates, it matters less, but you still do it because consistency is how you read the data. Before you go further into the installation phase, I need to show you something about material selection that most people miss. The balsa wood matters. Not because it has to be balsa specifically, but because of what balsa represents, a food source of absolutely maximum palatability to termites. Balsa has a cellular structure that termites find irresistible. Other softwoods work, southern pine works, but balsa is the gold standard. When you use balsa, you're using the same principle that the professional stations use in their $1,000 bait systems. Highest cellulose concentration, fastest colonization rate, clearest data. You spend 30 cents on balsa instead of $8,000 on professional equipment, and you get the same signal speed. Before we continue deeper into the installation and monitoring schedule, I need you to hold this concept in your mind for a second. What you're building here is not just a trap. You're building a communication system. The termites are going to tell you, through the presence or absence of mud tubes on that bottle, through the number of workers you see, through the speed at which they mobilize, exactly what's happening in the soil beneath your house. And that information is worth far more than the 50 cents you spend building it. Now, if you want the complete framework for reading those termite signals, how to count foraging pressure, how to estimate colony size from feeding patterns, how to distinguish between a threat and normal activity, that information is in the detailed survival guide I've put together and made available in the pinned comment and the description. It covers the entire communication pattern, the seasonal variables, and what action steps to take when your bottles show different scenarios. The guide goes deep into the mechanisms behind this method. That's where the hidden patterns are revealed. Installation is straightforward, but it follows a specific logic. You place bottles every 4 feet around the foundation of your house, not 8 feet like the commercial stations, 4 feet. This creates a monitoring grid so dense that a foraging termite column cannot reach the foundation without passing directly over one of your bottles. It's not passive observation. It's deliberate interception. The bottle goes into the soil, partially buried. The painted portion sits below the soil line. The unpainted viewing window stays above ground. This way, the termite's natural path, coming up from the colony below, following the foundation, passes directly through the bottle. You can check it from above without digging. Monthly checks are standard. Some people do quarterly if they're in a low-risk area. But monthly is the standard rhythm in the Amish farms I know, especially in fall and early spring, when termite activity surges. The old folks kept these records in a ledger. Date, location, number of termites observed, presence or absence of mud tubes, weather patterns from the previous week. Over time, these records told a story. Which side of the house was most vulnerable? Which season saw the heaviest pressure? Did a warm, wet spring correlate with termite activity 3 weeks later? This is not guesswork. This is pattern recognition based on accumulated data. Modern pest control companies do the exact same thing with their monitoring stations. The difference is they charge you to hold the clipboard. Now, what does an active termite discovery look like? This is where the unpainted viewing window becomes your diagnostic tool. If you check your bottle and you see no activity, no mud tubes on the outside, no workers visible in the unpainted section, then you have baseline information. No termites in that location, at least not yet. But the moment you see workers, the moment you see mud tubes forming on the exterior, the moment you see the telltale signs of foraging activity, your grid has done its job. You know. You know exactly where the pressure is coming from. You know the side of your house most at risk. And you know this weeks, sometimes months, before termites ever reach your actual structural wood. When active termites colonize a bottle, they don't hide, they leave evidence. Mud tubes, the thin, mud-colored tunnels they build, will appear on the outside of the bottle. The balsa will show signs of consumption. The unpainted viewing section will allow you to count workers, sometimes dozens, sometimes hundreds, depending on the colony's proximity and size. And here's what separates this method from every other DIY trap. You're not harming them. You're not creating a kill zone. You're simply documenting their presence with absolute clarity. The professional station does exactly this. Cellulose bait, monitoring chamber, placement in the ground, monthly inspection schedule. The cost structure is where the divergence happens. The company charges for the station installation. They charge for the inspection labor. They charge for the bait cartridges when they need replacing. They charge for follow-up treatments. They charge for annual monitoring contracts. All of that overhead gets built into the estimate. But the underlying mechanism, the principle of attracting termites to a monitored location using high-quality cellulose, that principle costs nothing. It's biology. It's available to anyone willing to spend an afternoon and $2.05 worth of materials. The assembly line approach makes sense if you're monitoring a large property. An Amish farmstead with multiple outbuildings, the house, the barn, the smokehouse, the storage sheds, might require 50 or 60 bottles for complete monitoring. That becomes a project. You invite family. You set up stations on a workbench. You assemble in batches. Paint, water, balsa wood insertion, labeling. 3 hours of work produces enough stations to protect your entire operation for the year. The cost is under $3, zero. The time investment is minimal. The payoff is early warning. And this is where the real value emerges. By the time a homeowner notices termite damage, by the time they see the mud tubes or the soft wood, the colony has often been feeding for months, sometimes years. The repair cost has escalated from treatable to catastrophic. I have seen foundation beams in old farmhouses that required replacement. I have seen timber repairs that cost more than a new roof. I have heard stories from my grandfather of entire barns that were structurally compromised because the termite pressure was monitored too late. Your water bottle grid, placed every 4 feet, checked every month, represents the difference between catching a problem before it becomes an emergency and finding the emergency after it's already happened. This is not theoretical. The economics are real. A single bottle costs 50 cents and catches termites before they compromise a beam worth thousands. That's the math. That's the reason the old farms survived as long as they did. Not through luck, through vigilance. Through a simple system that worked so reliably that it became tradition. End. Part 2. And this, right here, is the secret I promised you at the beginning. This simple bottle is not just a pest monitor, it's a bridge between two worlds. On one side, you have the modern pest control industry, charging thousands of dollars to do exactly what you can do yourself for the cost of a coffee. On the other side, you have centuries of Amish and plain community vigilance, the monthly cellar walk, the careful eye trained to notice what doesn't belong. This bottle brings both together. It's old wisdom wearing new clothes. When you walk that same cellar walk your grandparents walked, you're not just checking for damage anymore, you're preventing it. You're catching the problem in week 2 instead of year 5. You're spending $2.5 on materials and an afternoon of your time instead of $3 to a contractor. But more than that, and this matters, you're reclaiming the authority to care for your own house. You're saying, I don't need to hand this responsibility over to someone else. I can see what's happening under my own foundation. I can respond before it becomes a crisis. The Amish don't use the word preventative maintenance, but they live it every day. They walk their barns monthly. They check their fields for new erosion after heavy rain. They inspect the smokehouse timbers before winter. They know that catching small problems is how you avoid big ones. That's not quaint. That's not old-fashioned. That's intelligent economics. That's the difference between a house that lasts 2 generations and a house that lasts 8. Your water bottle grid does one more thing that the $8.00 stations don't do. It teaches you. Every month when you check those bottles, you're training your eye. You're learning what active termite mud looks like. You're learning the color, the texture, the way it adheres to the plastic. You're learning to distinguish between old mud that's dried and crumbling and fresh mud that's still being built by active colonies. You're becoming the expert on your own property. And that knowledge compounds. Month after month, year after year, you understand your foundation the way a farmer understands his soil. You know it. You can read it. You can respond to it. This is what the professional stations take from you. They give you a bill and a false sense of security. They say, we will worry about this. You pay them, and you stop thinking about it. Your water bottle system does the opposite. It invites you into the work. It makes you a participant in the defense of your own house. Some of you watching will implement this system this month. You'll buy the materials, you'll spend the afternoon installing those bottles, and you'll feel something shift. You'll feel more in control of your property. You'll sleep better knowing that you're not waiting for a problem to announce itself through a soft floor. You'll have confidence that comes from direct knowledge, not from a contract and a handshake with a stranger. Others of you will file this away. You'll think, I'll do this next year, and that's fine. But I want you to understand what you're choosing when you delay. You're choosing to maintain the current system. You're choosing to stay dependent on the expertise of others. You're choosing to write checks instead of investing time. None of those are wrong choices. But they are choices, and once you know there's an alternative, the decision is no longer passive. The mathematics of this are not complicated. A water bottle grid costs $2.5. A termite treatment, after damage has started, costs $2 to $5.00. The decision makes itself, but the real value isn't financial. It's the decision itself. It's choosing to be the custodian of your property instead of the customer of a service. It's choosing to see what's happening instead of hoping nothing is happening. It's choosing the old way, the way that kept farmhouses standing for centuries, wrapped in a 21st century package that works just as well now as it did then. This is the secret. This is why I wanted you to stay until the end. Not because the bottle is clever. It is, but that's not the point. The point is that the system works because it's simple enough that you'll actually use it. It works because it costs so little that you can afford to be thorough. It works because it makes you responsible instead of making you dependent. Every month when you walk that cellar and check those bottles, you're not just monitoring for termites. You're reclaiming the knowledge that built this country. You're joining the tradition of people who took care of what belonged to them. Start with this. This week, gather your materials. A water bottle, balsa wood, spray paint. Set aside an afternoon. Install your first grid around your house. Every 4 feet, just like we walked through. Then commit to one simple practice. One cellar walk every month. That's it. That's the entire system. And when you do it, notice how it feels. Notice the shift from waiting for disaster to actively preventing it. Notice yourself becoming the expert on your own foundation. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this video. If you found value in understanding how the old vigilance methods can protect what you've built, please subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss a new upload. Leave a comment below and tell me, what's one area of your property that you've been putting off monitoring? I read every comment, and I genuinely want to know what matters most to you. Your insights help shape what we explore next on Forgotten Roots Survival. End of Part 3.